Welcome to my channel, The World of Science Fiction. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel.
Rel's breath clouded the visor of his salvage helmet as he descended through the abandoned orbital penal station's maintenance shaft. The comms crackled with static. Then his partner's voice broke through. Rel, we've secured the East Wing. Found a cache of medical supplies that'll fetch a decent price. How's it looking down there? Rel adjusted his headlamp, illuminating the frost-covered corridor ahead. Dark, cold, nothing special yet. Hurry up. Captain wants us off this rock in 6 hours. Place gives me the creeps. It's just an old prison, Rel replied, but something in the hollow echo of his words made him doubt his own conviction. No ghosts here. That's not what the last salvage team said, his partner muttered. They claimed something was moving in the deep levels. Something watching them. Superstitious nonsense, Rel scoffed, but his hand instinctively tightened around his pulse pistol. Just old systems firing randomly. Static interrupted the transmission before his partner could respond. Then faintly through the interference, Rel caught fragments of another conversation. Guards from a different part of the station. Found Morgan's ID down in the restricted zone. Oh, near the Ice Queen's chamber? Poor bastard. Third one this year. No one who goes near her ever comes back. Heard one guy tried to kiss her as a joke. They never even found his body. The transmission cut out completely, leaving Rel alone with the unsettling words. He hesitated, finger hovering over the comm button to request clarification, but decided against it. Probably just salvager ghost stories to scare newcomers. The comms went silent as he pushed deeper into the station's lower levels. The station's architectural style was ancient, at least 3 centuries old, with thick, reinforced walls designed to contain the most dangerous criminals of that era. Most sections had been stripped by previous salvage operations, but rumors persisted of a sealed chamber in the lowest level, untouched since the station's abandonment. As he navigated the frozen corridors, Rel's mind drifted to how he'd ended up here. A licensed salvager working the outer rim of abandoned space. The memories came unbidden, sharp and clear despite the years that had passed. 5 years earlier, Magistrate Detention Facility, Helios Prime. Prisoner HS-117, the automated voice announced. Step forward for sentencing. Rel stood, the gravity restraints heavy around his wrists. The courtroom was clinical, efficient. Justice dispensed without emotion or delay. You have been found guilty of unauthorized access to government systems, theft of classified information, and conspiracy to distribute restricted technology, the magistrate intoned, not bothering to look up from her console. Standard sentence is 15 years hard labor in the Ceres mining colony. Rel said nothing. The evidence against him had been manufactured, but that hardly mattered now. He'd made powerful enemies by exposing corruption in the planetary defense contracts. This was their response, swift and merciless. However, the magistrate continued, given your technical expertise, an alternative sentence has been proposed. This was unexpected. Rel looked up. You will serve 5 years as a contracted salvager for the Reclamation Authority, retrieving technology from abandoned outposts in restricted zones. Dangerous work, but preferable to mining, I should think. It was a standard practice, sending convicted hackers and tech specialists into the deadly abandoned zones, rather than wasting their skills in labor camps. Many didn't return. Those who did earn their freedom, provided they survived. Do you accept this alternative? Rel nodded. I accept. 5 years later, he was still alive, one of the few who'd survived their full sentence. Now a free man, he continued the work, having found no better use for his skills in a society that had branded him a criminal. The memory faded as his scanner picked up an energy signature. Found something, Rel reported as his scanner detected an energy signature. Faint power source. Level 8, Section C. No response. The thick walls blocked transmission at this depth. He approached a massive door marked with warning symbols in a language he half recognized. Ancient security protocols, long defunct, or so he thought, until his scanner detected an active containment field. Interesting, he murmured, overriding the lock with his salvage codes. The door resisted, then grudgingly slid open with a hiss of equalizing pressure. The chamber beyond was unlike anything he'd seen in the station thus far. Clean, preserved. as if time itself had been forbidden to enter, and at its center, what appeared to be a statue, a blue-skinned woman, perfectly preserved in what he first thought was transparent crystal. Chains wrapped around her limbs, etched with symbols that seemed to shimmer in his headlamp's beam. Rel didn't believe in ghosts. He believed in broken circuits, rusted doors, and tight schedules. So when his flashlight beam swept over the sealed cryopod and stopped on the silhouette of a chained, blue-skinned woman inside, he didn't flinch, just exhaled. "Another relic," he muttered. "Hell of a thing to rot up here." The chamber stank of coolant and silence. It hadn't been entered in centuries. Metal groaned against vacuum beyond the hull, a reminder of the abandoned orbital penal station's fragility. Rel's breath fogged in the frigid air as he approached the pod, boots scraping against frost-covered flooring. His salvage team had scattered throughout the station, hunting for valuable tech and materials, but he'd volunteered to check the lower levels alone. The pod hissed slightly, still powered. Somehow. Rel swept his scanner over the unit. Power readings flickered but held steady. Impossible after all this time. The station's primary systems had failed decades ago, yet this isolated chamber maintained integrity. He tapped his comm unit, but only static answered. The thick walls blocked transmission. He knelt. Her face was peaceful. No frostbite. No decay. Stasis. Her lips were slightly parted, a faint blue that matched her skin, which held an almost translucent quality. Her hair, white as starlight, framed features that seemed both alien and hauntingly beautiful. Chains anchored her to the bed, etched with symbols he didn't recognize. Not standard script from any system he'd visited. As his light moved across her body, it illuminated a distinctive mark on her neck, an intricate pattern of interlocking circles with a central symbol that looked like a shattered star. Rel's breath caught. He'd seen that mark before, in contraband archives during his time in the detention facility. The Forbidden Histories called it the Cipher's Seal. "It can't be," he whispered. "You're just a legend." The stories claim that centuries ago, the most dangerous prisoner in galactic history had been erased from official records and sealed away, a being who could bend reality with thought alone. The stories said that if she ever awakened, the boundaries between worlds would collapse. His fascination was interrupted by a sudden blaring alarm from somewhere outside the chamber. Red emergency lights activated overhead, bathing the room in crimson. Through the sealed door came the sound of mechanical movement, security systems activating after centuries of dormancy. "Security breach in Section 7G, announced an automated voice. "Unauthorized access detected. Containment protocols activated." Rel's pulse quickened. His team must have triggered something in another part of the station. Standard procedure would be to leave immediately, abandon the salvage, and return to the ship. He glanced at the woman in the pod, then at the door. He had maybe 3 minutes before the station's ancient defense systems sealed this level permanently. "Just walk away," he told himself. "She's not your problem." But curiosity, or perhaps something else, kept him rooted to the spot. He found himself drawn back to the pod, examining the control panel. The stasis field could be deactivated with a simple command sequence. Rel glanced around, confirming he was alone. His flashlight cast long shadows across the chamber, illuminating ancient medical equipment and monitoring stations long dead. Only the pod itself showed signs of functioning. He grinned. "Want to hear a joke, Ice Queen?" The sound of his voice echoed strangely in the chamber, as if absorbed by the walls. Something about this place felt wrong, preserved beyond what technology should allow. But Rel had spent too many years salvaging derelict stations to believe in superstition. He leaned in and kissed her. It was barely a touch, just pressure against cold, unyielding lips. Cold, dead, nothing, until her eyes opened. Amber, focused, burning with an inner light that seemed to pierce straight through him. A thin layer of crystalline frost cracked across her face, falling away like diamond dust. Her eyelids fluttered, once, twice, struggling against centuries of stillness. Her chest rose with her first breath, a painful, gasping motion that seemed to shock her own body. Her fingers twitched against the restraints, muscle memory returning in slow, excruciating increments. "You fool," she whispered, her voice scraping like ice against metal, the first words to pass her lips in 300 years. The chains glowed with sudden intensity, casting the chamber in eerie blue light, and one snapped. The sound echoed like a gunshot. Rel stumbled back, knocking over his toolkit. Tools scattered across the frosted floor as the woman's arm moved, free from restraint. Her fingers flexed slowly, deliberately, as if remembering how to move. Her eyes darted around the chamber, confusion and disorientation evident. For a moment she seemed to believe she was still dreaming, or perhaps dead. Her lips formed words without sound, testing reality. Then her gaze locked onto Rel, and clarity returned with terrifying speed. With sudden, violent motion, she lunged from the pod, the remaining chains stretching but not breaking. Her free hand reached for his throat, fingers curling like claws. Rel reacted instinctively, catching her wrist before she could reach him. Her strength was surprising, far greater than her slender frame suggested. He struggled to hold her back as her amber eyes blazed with fury. "Who sent you?" she demanded, her voice growing stronger with each word. "Another test? Another torture?" "Nobody sent me," Rel gasped, still maintaining his grip on her wrist. "I'm just a salvager." The station's alarm grew louder. Through the chamber's viewing port, Rel could see security doors beginning to close in the corridor outside. They had minutes, perhaps seconds, before they were trapped. "You need to calm down," he said firmly. "This place is about to lock down. We'll both be trapped if we don't move." She hesitated, her eyes flicking to the viewing port and back to him. The rational part of her seemed to be reasserting control over primal rage. "How are you awake?" "This pod was sealed for 312 years, she said, her voice growing stronger with each word. She rose to a sitting position, movements precise despite centuries of immobility. Her legs trembled but held as she stepped from the pod. The remaining chains hung from her other wrist, ankle, and neck, dragging against the floor with a metallic scrape. She stared at him, gaze sharp and evaluating. "You broke the seal." "The what?" Confusion gave way to shock as a burning sensation spread across Rel's wrist. He looked down. The same glowing symbols that adorned her chains had appeared on his skin, etching themselves like luminous tattoos. "What the hell did I just do?" Panic edged his voice as he tried to rub away the markings. They only glowed brighter. She exhaled, her breath visible in the cold air. "You shared the sentence. I was condemned to isolation until death." She paused, watching the symbols spread further up his arm. "Now we're bound. I live because of you. And you. You can only die when I do." For a moment, her eyes seemed to lose focus, looking not at him, but through him, into a past that had haunted her for centuries. 313 years earlier, Research Institute, Meridian Outpost. "Sarah, we need to talk." She looked up from her work, recognizing her brother's voice. Tarek stood in the doorway of her laboratory, his military uniform crisp, but his expression troubled. "Can it wait?" "I'm close to a breakthrough with the neural interface," she replied, her fingers still manipulating the holographic model before her. A map of consciousness itself, rendered in glowing blue pathways. "No, it can't." Tarek stepped inside, sealing the door behind him. "The council has ordered a demonstration." Sarah's hand stilled. "A demonstration? On whom?" "Prisoners from the outer colonies. Dissidents." His voice dropped. "They want to see if they can be reprogrammed." "That's not what my research is for," she said sharply. "The interface is meant to heal trauma, to connect isolated minds across vast distances, not to control them." Tarek approached, his voice urgent. "The family has invested everything in this project, Sarah. Father has guaranteed results to the council." "I don't care what Father promised," she snapped. "I won't turn my work into a weapon." "You don't have a choice." His face softened. "They'll take it from you if you refuse. And you know what happens to those who defy the council." She did know. Their eldest brother had disappeared 3 years ago after questioning council policy. Their parents had never spoken his name again. "Give me time," she said finally. "A week. I need to prepare the interface properly." Tarek nodded, relieved. "1 week. I'll tell Father." After he left, Sarah activated the lab's privacy protocols. Then she began systematically downloading her research onto an isolated drive and initiating a virus that would corrupt the central database. She had no intention of allowing her life's work to become a tool for oppression. 1 week later, the laboratory exploded, destroying all physical evidence of her research. The official report listed it as an accident, a power surge in the experimental equipment. But Sarah had vanished along with the only working prototype of the neural interface. It took them 2 years to find her, hiding on a remote outpost. By then, she had implanted the interface in her own mind, ensuring the technology could never be extracted without her cooperation. The council's sentence had been clear: eternal isolation, preserved in stasis, until death claimed her or she surrendered her knowledge. The specially designed prison, this very station, had been built to contain her in the dangerous technology she carried. The memory faded as she focused again on Rel, seeing his confusion and fear. "My name is Sarah," she said quietly, the first time she had spoken it aloud in 3 centuries. Rel backed away, crashing into a monitoring console. "That's impossible. This is just old tech malfunctioning." Some kind of... A deep rumble interrupted him. The station shuddered, and ancient alert systems flared to life. Red emergency lights bathed the chamber as a computerized voice crackled through long dormant speakers. "Containment breach detected. Prisoner release unauthorized. Initiating purge protocol." Sarah's expression didn't change. "The station remembers its purpose." "We need to get out of here," Rel said, gathering his essential tools. "My ship is docked on level 3. "You don't understand what you've done," she replied, but followed as he moved toward the exit. Each step seemed to strengthen her, the centuries of immobility fading. "I'll figure it out later. Right now, we're both dead if we stay." The door to the chamber, which had opened easily when he entered, now refused to respond. Rel pried open the manual override panel and cross-wired the circuits. The door shuddered and slid open a half-meter before stopping. "Tight fit," he muttered, squeezing through. He turned to see her watching him with those unsettling amber eyes. "You could leave me," she said, her voice flat. "Yeah, well..." He extended a hand through the gap. "Something tells me that wouldn't solve my problem." She took his hand. Her skin was warming, no longer the ice he had kissed. As she slipped through the gap, the remaining chains dragged behind her, leaving glowing marks on the floor. The corridor beyond was activating, systems waking after centuries of dormancy. Lights flickered, revealing a passage that stretched into darkness. Another rumble shook the station, more violent than before. "This way," Rel said, heading toward a maintenance shaft. "There's an evac tunnel beneath the station." "This is insane," Rel snapped, shouldering open a maintenance hatch that protested with a screech of ancient metal. "I was sent to salvage." "You touched the condemned," she interrupted, her voice echoing in the narrow passage. "I kissed you. As a joke." He turned to face her, flashlight illuminating her features in harsh relief. "Who the hell are you anyway?" "My name was taken when the sentence was passed," she replied, following him into the cramped tunnel. "As was my history." "Great. Fantastic." Rel moved forward, checking his wrist device for station schematics. "So I'm bound to a nameless criminal. Perfect salvage run." "That chamber wasn't a tomb," she said, ducking beneath a hanging cable. "It was a prison of memory. My punishment wasn't death. It was to relive my betrayal." She limped behind him, blood smearing from her bare feet where the sharp edges of discarded metal had cut into her skin. Her chains had begun to change, seeming to melt into her skin, now glowing dimly beneath the surface like luminous veins. "And now you share that punishment," she added. Rel stopped abruptly, turning to face her. His expression hardened with anger and fear. "You want me to die with you? For a kiss? A stupid joke?" Her amber eyes flickered in the dim light. It wasn't a joke. It was an awakening. "You're a monster," he spat, "dragging me into your punishment for something I didn't do." "And you are weak," she replied coolly, "afraid of consequences you don't understand. I understand enough. You're dangerous. That's why they locked you away." "Yes," she agreed, surprising him. "I am dangerous, but not to you. Not anymore. We share the same fate now." Behind them, a muffled explosion rocked the tunnel. Dust and debris showered down as the station's systems executed their ancient protocols. "What was that?" Rel demanded. "Self-destruct," she answered calmly. "The chamber was designed to eliminate all evidence if breached." She didn't flinch at the sound of destruction. He did. "Your friends," she said, noticing his expression. "The salvage team." Rel's face hardened. "They were on the upper levels. If they're smart, they'll evacuate. And if they're not?" He didn't answer, just continued through the tunnel at a faster pace. The passage narrowed further, forcing them to crawl through sections where the ceiling had partially collapsed. The woman followed silently, chains scraping against metal. After what seemed like hours of navigating the labyrinthine underbelly of the station, they reached a vertical shaft. Rel directed his light upward, revealing a ladder that disappeared into darkness. "This should lead to the surface access," he said, testing the lowest rung. It held. "Can you climb?" In answer, she gripped the ladder and began to ascend, movements growing more fluid with each passing minute. Rel followed, watching as she navigated the climb with increasing confidence. "Whatever they did to you," he observed, "it's wearing off fast." "The seal contained me," she replied without looking down. "Without it, I returned to what I was." "And what exactly was that?" A pause. "Something they feared enough to hide beyond the reach of time." They climbed in silence after that, the only sounds their breathing and the occasional groan of the station adjusting to the recent disruptions. Above them, a circle of light gradually widened, an exit hatch leading to the surface. The woman reached it first, pushing against the heavy cover. It resisted, then slowly gave way. A blast of frigid air rushed down the shaft as the hatch opened to reveal a blood-orange sky. They climbed out onto the surface of the abandoned moon, freezing wind cutting through Rel's thermal suit. The landscape stretched before them, barren and ice-covered, broken only by the skeletal remains of long-abandoned structures. In the distance, the penal station rose like a diseased growth from the frozen ground, smoke now billowing from several breached sections. "No stars?" Rel asked, looking up at the strangely empty sky. "This moon was buried in time," she replied, standing beside him. "Outside the galactic registry, no one will find us." He turned to face her. "So we're stuck here, forever." "Unless you want to die," she said, eyes fixed on his. "That would free me." She said it like it was logical, a simple solution to a problem. He laughed, the sound harsh in the thin atmosphere. "We just met. That's a bit fast for self-sacrifice, don't you think?" She didn't smile. "The bond works both ways," she explained. "Your life sustains mine. Your death releases me from the sentence." "And what about my friends? The station? If they were inside when the self-destruct activated, they're gone." Her voice held no emotion. "The station was designed to leave no evidence." Rel's wrist device beeped, drawing his attention. The screen flickered, then displayed a simple message. No signal. "My ship might still be intact," he said. "If we can reach the docking bay—" "The destruction will be thorough," she interrupted. "Your vessel is already gone." He stared at her, realizing the full implications of their situation. "You knew this would happen. The moment I woke you." "I knew the protocols," she admitted. "They were part of my sentence." The wind picked up, driving ice crystals that stung exposed skin. In the distance, a low rumble suggested further destruction within the station. "We need shelter," Rel said, scanning the horizon. "There." He pointed to a cluster of structures half buried in ice. "Looks like old maintenance buildings. Might have supplies." She nodded and began walking, her bare feet leaving bloody prints on the ice that were quickly erased by the wind. Rel followed, mind racing through possibilities, none of them promising. As they moved away from the station, he noticed shapes beneath the ice. Machinery, vehicles, and what might have been bodies preserved in the frozen ground. This place wasn't just a prison, it was a graveyard. "What happened here?" he asked. "The same thing that happens to all secrets," she replied. "They were buried." The wind changed direction suddenly, carrying a sound that wasn't natural, a mechanical whirring growing louder. The air seemed to thicken with tension as the noise approached. "Something's coming," Rel warned, drawing the pulse pistol he carried for protection. "The security systems," she said, eyes scanning the barren landscape. "Still operational." From behind a ridge of ice emerged a massive construct, a security drone 3 times human height, moving on articulated legs that crushed the frozen ground beneath them. Its sensor array rotated, scanning the area methodically. "Down!" Rel pulled Sarah behind a fallen piece of debris as the drone's sensors swept past their position. "It won't help," she whispered. "They're programmed to erase anything not registered." "Your name?" "Rel. You're not on the registry. They will kill you." "What about you?" She looked down at the chains partially embedded in her skin. "I was erased." The drone paused, then changed direction, moving precisely toward their hiding place. Its weapon systems hummed to life. "Run!" Rel said, rising into a crouch. On my mark. She tensed beside him. Ready. Now! They broke cover simultaneously, sprinting across the open ground toward a stand of strange, crystalline formations that rose like dead trees from the ice. The drone reacted instantly, firing a burst of energy that melted the ice where they had stood moments before. Left! Sarah shouted as another blast erupted near them. Rel veered sharply, following her direction. How many? Too many! She ducked as a shard of ice exploded overhead. More drones appeared over the ridge, joining the pursuit. 5, 6, 7 massive constructs, all converging on their position. Split up! Rel gasped, his breath burning in the cold air. No, stay close! Sarah grabbed his sleeve, pulling him behind a larger crystal formation. They'll target you first. They're hurting us, she added as they momentarily found cover. Away from the station? Away from escape. They reached the crystal formations, an ice forest of twisted shapes that provided minimal cover. Rel ducked behind one of the larger structures, pulling Sarah down beside him. My ship had an emergency beacon, he said between labored breaths. If we can find it, the drones will find us first, she interrupted. A mechanical howl cut through the air, an alarm signal from the lead drone. The sound was answered by the others, creating a cacophony that echoed across the frozen landscape. Move, she urged. They're coordinating. They ran deeper into the ice forest, navigating between the crystal formations. Beneath their feet, shapes were visible. Dead machines buried in the transparent ice, some still clutching weapons, frozen in their final moments. What are these things? Rel asked, jumping over a particularly clear section of ice containing what looked like a humanoid figure. Failed escape attempts, Sarah replied grimly. This moon has had prisoners before me. The drones followed, smashing through the smaller crystals, their massive legs crushing anything in their path. One fired a pulse that shattered a formation ahead, sending deadly shards in all directions. Cover, Rel shouted. Too late, Sarah responded. Rel stumbled, a large fragment slicing through his thermal suit and into his leg. He fell, blood quickly freezing on the ice. Get up, Sarah urged, turning back. Can't, he gritted, the pain overwhelming. Go! The woman turned, seeing him down. She could have continued running, could have left him to the drones while she sought escape. She didn't. Instead, she rushed back, her chain arm raised. As the nearest drone loomed over Rel, she whipped the chain forward with impossible strength. It struck the drone's sensor array, the glowing symbols flaring with energy upon impact. Sarah, behind you, Rel warned. She spun, narrowly avoiding a second drone's attack. The machine staggered, its core visibly cracked by the blow. Sparks erupted from the damaged section as the drone's systems failed catastrophically. It collapsed, legs folding beneath it. How did you... Rel began. Later! She cut him off. The woman staggered, blood flowing from where the chain had torn further into her skin during the attack. The remaining drones adjusted their approach, weapons targeting her position. A second drone advanced rapidly, its weapons trained on the weakened woman. She tried to raise her chain arm again, but the effort from her first attack had clearly drained her. Her knees buckled and she fell to one knee, defenseless before the approaching machine. Rel forced himself up, ignoring the searing pain in his leg. He limped forward, placing himself between Sarah and the drone. With precise aim, he fired his pulse pistol directly at the machine's targeting sensor, temporarily blinding it. The drone fired wildly, missing them both. I can't carry you, Rel said, helping her to her feet. But I won't leave you either. Something flickered in her amber eyes. Surprise, perhaps even gratitude. He grabbed her arm and pulled her toward a dark opening in the ice, a cave or crevasse that might offer temporary shelter. They half ran, half stumbled into the darkness as energy pulses struck the ice behind them. The cave extended deeper than expected, winding downward into the frozen moon. They continued until the sounds of pursuit faded, then collapsed against a wall of ice, exhausted. You saved me, Rel said between ragged breaths. You carry my sentence, she replied, examining the wound where her chain had torn free during the attack. You die, I rot alone again. And then you saved me, he countered. When you could have run. She didn't respond, but her expression had softened slightly. Rel watched her, understanding, slowly forming. So I'm your leash? Just a tool for survival. She met his gaze, amber eyes unreadable. And you're my key. In the dim light filtering through the ice above, Rel could see that the cave continued deeper, opening into what appeared to be an artificial structure beneath the surface. "There's something down there," he said, using his flashlight to illuminate the passage ahead. "Looks constructed." "This moon has many secrets," Sarah replied, rising with difficulty. "Few of them kind." Rel tried to stand, but collapsed back against the wall, his wounded leg unable to support his weight. The cut was deeper than he had initially thought, blood continuing to seep through the torn thermal suit despite the cold. "You need medical attention," Sarah observed, kneeling to examine the wound. "I'm fine," he grunted, though his pallor suggested otherwise. "Just need a minute." She tore a strip of fabric from her prison garment and wrapped it tightly around his thigh, creating a makeshift tourniquet. "This will slow the bleeding, but we need to keep moving. The drones will find this cave eventually." "I can walk," Rel insisted, trying again to stand. This time he managed to get upright, leaning heavily against the ice wall. Sarah watched him struggle to take a step, then shook her head. "No, you can't." Without warning, she moved to his side and ducked under his arm, supporting his weight with surprising strength for someone who had been in stasis for centuries. Her body was slender but solid against his, her skin now warm where it pressed against him. "Lean on me," she instructed. "We'll move faster together than with you limping behind." Rel hesitated, pride warring with practicality. "I outweigh you by at least 20 kilos. And I spent 3 centuries gathering energy," she countered. "Trust me." He surrendered, allowing her to take his weight. Together they moved deeper into the cave, his arm around her shoulders, her arm around his waist. Each step sent fresh pain through his leg, but with her support, he could continue. "Why are you helping me?" he asked after they had gone some distance in silence. "I understand why you didn't leave me to the drones. Self-preservation. But this is different." Sarah didn't immediately answer. When she did, her voice was soft. 300 years is a long time to think about choices, about consequences. And I've watched many people die because of me," she said. "My brother, my colleagues, the security forces sent to capture me. All because I created something I couldn't control. I won't add you to that list." They followed the passage, descending further below the surface. The natural ice formations gradually gave way to manufactured corridors, abandoned but remarkably preserved. The air grew warmer as they progressed, suggesting active systems somewhere ahead. "What is this place?" Rel asked, running his hand along a wall marked with the same symbols that adorned Sarah's chains. "Part of the prison," she answered, "the part they buried deepest." The corridor opened into a vast chamber where gravity seemed to falter. Objects floated gently in the space. Furniture, equipment, and what appeared to be personal effects, all suspended in a gentle drift. At the center stood a massive cylindrical structure, a reactor core still humming with power. "This can signal off-moon," Rel said, approaching the control panel that circled the base of the reactor. His leg gave way beneath him, and he would have fallen if Sarah hadn't caught him. "Sit," she commanded, helping him to a floating chair that drifted nearby. "You've lost too much blood." He didn't argue this time, allowing her to examine the wound properly in the reactor's blue-tinged light. The cut was deep, exposing muscle and possibly nicking an artery. "I need to seal this," Sarah said, looking around the chamber. She drifted to a suspended cabinet and returned with what appeared to be medical supplies. "This will hurt." Before Rel could respond, she pressed a device against his wound. Intense heat flared through his leg as the device cauterized the injury. He bit back a scream, his hands gripping the edges of the chair until his knuckles turned white. "Sorry," she murmured, continuing her work. "But it's better than bleeding out." When she finished, the wound was sealed, though the pain remained. She applied a cooling gel and wrapped the area with proper bandages. "That should hold," she said, her touch gentler than he expected. "But you need real medical attention." Rel nodded toward the reactor. "Which is why we need that beacon. This is a quantum beacon. It could punch through whatever's blocking normal communications. If you send a signal, my sentence ends," Sarah said quietly. He hesitated, fingers hovering over the activation sequence. "What do you mean?" "They'll come for me. Finish the execution." Her voice remained calm, but her eyes betrayed fear, the first real emotion he'd seen from her. "The authorities who created this place, they don't forgive. They don't forget." He looked at the console, then at her. She looked tired, resigned. "Do it," she said. "I deserve it." No! He smashed the panel with the butt of his pulse pistol, sending sparks flying across the chamber. If we escape, we both do it on our terms. She stared at him, confusion evident. Why would you? I don't know what you did, he interrupted. Don't care, honestly. But 300 years is enough punishment for anyone. A tremor ran through the structure, stronger than before. The floating objects began to drift more erratically as the gravity fluctuations intensified. That wasn't me, Rel said, looking up as dust showered from the ceiling. Something's happening. The station's destruction, she explained. It's destabilizing the moon's core. This entire facility was integrated into the planetary systems. Meaning? This moon is dying. We have hours, perhaps less. Rel checked his wrist device, which now displayed a structural integrity warning. There has to be another way out. Emergency systems, escape pods, something. She shook her head. This facility was designed to be inescapable. Yet here we are walking around, he countered. No system is perfect. We just need to find the flaw. They emerged from the reactor room into a corridor that felt marginally safer, though Rel's wrist device still showed critical structural warnings. They paused to rest, both exhausted from their desperate flight through the crumbling facility. Rel slumped against the wall, sliding down until he sat on the cold floor. Sarah remained standing, ever vigilant, her eyes scanning the corridor in both directions. We have maybe an hour before this section collapses too, she said, her voice matter-of-fact. We should keep moving soon. Rel nodded but made no immediate move to get up. The adrenaline that had carried him this far was fading, leaving him acutely aware of the pain in his injured leg and the absurdity of their situation. You know, he said with a weak attempt at humor, when I signed up for this salvage run, getting bound to a 300-year-old prisoner wasn't in the job description. He expected at least a sardonic glance, but Sarah's reaction was unexpected. Her expression hardened, amber eyes suddenly cold. Do you know what happened to my kind while you were just doing your job? She asked, her voice low but sharp as a blade. Do you have any idea what they did to the others like me? The ones who weren't important enough to preserve? Rel's smile faded. I didn't mean... They were dissected, she continued relentlessly. Studied. Their neural pathways mapped while they were still conscious. All in the name of understanding how our abilities worked. How they could be weaponized. She turned away, her profile rigid with contained fury. Some salvagers like you helped locate the hidden sanctuaries. Just doing their jobs. Following orders. The corridor fell silent except for the distant groaning of the failing structure. Rel looked down at his hands, ashamed without fully understanding why. He hadn't been part of whatever historical atrocity she was referring to, but her pain was palpable, immediate despite the centuries that had passed. Without another word, he pushed himself to his feet and limped down the corridor, away from her. Where are you going? She called after him. To find a way out, he replied without turning, or to get some air, whichever comes first. He disappeared around a bend in the corridor, leaving her alone. Hours passed. The structural integrity warnings on Sarah's chains grew more urgent, pulsing faster as the facility continued its gradual collapse. She had remained in the same spot, calculating possibilities, considering whether she might be better off continuing alone. The bond with Rel complicated things, but if the Keeper was right and it was weakening, she was just about to move when she heard footsteps approaching. Uneven, limping, but deliberate. Rel reappeared around the corner, looking exhausted but somehow more resolved than when he'd left. In his arms, he carried a bundle of supplies, emergency rations, medical equipment, and what looked like thermal gear scavenged from storage lockers. Found an emergency cache, he said simply, setting the items down between them. And something else, a maintenance shaft that might lead to the surface. It's not on any of the schematics, but it looks promising. He knelt, unpacking the medical supplies. Let me see your arm. Sarah looked at him warily, then extended her arm where one of the chains had torn free, leaving a raw, bleeding wound. Why did you come back? She asked as he began cleaning the injury. His hands worked gently, efficiently, belying the tension in his voice. Because regardless of what happened in the past, what your people did, what mine did, we're in this together now. He secured a bandage around her arm, then met her gaze directly. And because running away from difficult truths is what got us both here in the first place. Something shifted in Sarah's expression. Not softening exactly, but a kind of recognition. She nodded once, accepting both his help and his implied apology. "The maintenance shaft," she said. "Show me." As they turned to find an alternate route, they discovered an emergency evacuation chamber, a small room with a single escape pod designed for rapid exit from the facility. "This might work," Rel said, examining the pod's systems. "Power's still functional." Sarah approached, studying the pod with a critical eye. "It's designed for one occupant." "We can override the safety protocols," Rel suggested. "Make it work for two." She shook her head. "The launch system is biometric. It requires proper authorization." "Can you provide it?" he asked. "You said you helped design this place." "I was erased from the system," she reminded him. "But—" She stepped forward, placing her hand on the scanner. To their surprise, it illuminated with a green light. "Emergency protocols," she explained. "They override standard security in a facility-wide disaster." The pod's door slid open with a hiss of equalizing pressure. Inside was indeed space for only one person. Cramped, utilitarian, survival-focused. "You go," she said suddenly. "The bond is weakening. You might survive." Rel stared at her. "What are you talking about?" "The symbols," she gestured to his wrist. "They're fading. The sentence is breaking apart as the facility fails." He looked down. The glowing marks had indeed dimmed, now barely visible beneath his skin. "All the more reason we both leave," he insisted. Another violent tremor rocked the chamber. Warning lights flashed, indicating imminent structural collapse. "There's no time," she said. "The pod will only launch with proper weight distribution. One person." She pushed him toward the open door. "Go." Rel resisted. "Not without you." "I've lived 300 years, she said. "You haven't." "That's not how this works," he replied firmly. "We're bound, remember?" "Your rules." The facility's A announced in a calm voice. "Critical failure imminent. Evacuation advised. Pod launching in 30 seconds. Sarah looked at the pod, then at the collapsing corridor behind them. A chunk of ceiling crashed down, missing them by inches. "Go," she repeated more forcefully. "While you still can." Rel could see the exit tunnel ahead, a clear path to the surface. The pod's launch tube remained intact, while the rest of the facility crumbled. One person could easily escape. He was already halfway inside the pod, Sarah having pushed him toward safety. Freedom was a button press away. "Launch sequence initiated," the AI announced. "Ceiling door." The pod door began to close. Through the narrowing gap, he could see Sarah standing in the chamber, debris falling around her. Their eyes met one last time. Rel thrust his arm into the closing gap, preventing the door from sealing. The safety mechanism reversed, reopening the pod. "Override safety protocols," he commanded, ignoring the searing pain in his arm. "Manual exit." The AI protested. "Warning, pod launch sequence active. Manual exit not recommended." He ignored it, pushing himself out of the pod and back into the crumbling chamber. "What are you doing?" Sarah demanded, genuine shock in her amber eyes. "I'm not leaving you," he said simply. "You're a fool," she whispered. But there was something else in her voice. Wonder, perhaps even gratitude. "Probably," he agreed, taking her hand. "Let's find another way." The pod launched automatically behind them, empty as they turned to face the collapsing facility together. "There's a maintenance shaft," Sarah said, pointing to a narrow opening in the wall. "It might lead to the surface." They squeezed into the shaft just as the evacuation chamber collapsed behind them. The cramped space forced them to crawl on hands and knees, the heat of the moon's destabilizing core making the metal walls almost too hot to touch. "If we die here," Sarah said between labored breaths, "it's because of your stubbornness." "If we die here," Rel countered, "at least neither of us dies alone." She fell silent at that, but in the dim emergency lighting, he could see her expression soften. After what seemed like hours of navigating the labyrinthine underbelly of the station, they reached a vertical shaft. Rel directed his light upward, revealing a ladder that disappeared into darkness. "This should lead to the surface access," he said, testing the lowest rung. It held. "Can you climb?" In answer, she gripped the ladder and began to ascend, movements growing more fluid with each passing minute. Rel followed, watching as she navigated the climb with increasing confidence. "Whatever they did to you," he observed, "it's wearing off fast." "The seal contained me," she replied without looking down. "Without it, I returned to what I was." And what exactly was that? A pause. Something they feared enough to hide beyond the reach of time? They climbed in silence after that, the only sounds their breathing and the occasional groan of the station adjusting to the recent disruptions. Above them, a circle of light gradually widened, an exit hatch leading to the surface. As they turned to find an alternate route, they discovered an emergency evacuation chamber, a small room with a single escape pod designed for rapid exit from the facility. "This might work," Rel said, examining the pod systems. "Power's still functional." The woman approached, studying the pod with a critical eye. "It's designed for one occupant. We can override the safety protocols," Rel suggested. "Make it work for two." She shook her head. "The launch system is biometric. It requires proper authorization." "Can you provide it?" he asked. "You said you helped design this place." "I was erased from the system," she reminded him. "But," she stepped forward, placing her hand on the scanner. To their surprise, it illuminated with a green light. "Emergency protocols," she explained. "They override standard security in a facility-wide disaster." The pod's door slid open with a hiss of equalizing pressure. Inside was indeed space for only one person. Cramped, utilitarian, survival-focused. "You go," she said suddenly. "The bond is weakening. You might survive." Rel stared at her. "What are you talking about?" "The symbols," she gestured to his wrist. "They're fading. The sentence is breaking apart as the facility fails." He looked down. The glowing marks had indeed dimmed, now barely visible beneath his skin. "All the more reason we both leave," he insisted. Another violent tremor rocked the chamber. Warning lights flashed, indicating imminent structural collapse. "There's no time," she said. "The pod will only launch with proper weight distribution. One person." She pushed him toward the open door. "Go," Rel resisted. "Not without you." "I've lived 300 years," she said. "You haven't." "That's not how this works," he replied firmly. "We're bound, remember?" "Your rules." The facility's AI announced in a calm voice. "Critical failure imminent. Evacuation advised. Pod launching in 30 seconds. She looked at him, then at the pod, calculation evident in her eyes. Then with unexpected speed, she struck him in the chest, knocking him backward into the pod. "Forgive me," she whispered as the door began to close. In the last possible moment, Rel reached out, grabbing her arm and pulling with all his remaining strength. She tumbled into the pod with him as the door sealed shut. "Override safety protocols," he commanded the pod system. "Emergency launch. 2 occupants." The AI responded, "Safety override denied. Pod designed for single occupant. Launch sequence aborted." They were trapped together in a space meant for one, the facility crumbling around them, with no way out. The woman looked at Rel with genuine surprise. "You could have gone. Why didn't you?" "The same reason you came back for me in the ice forest," he replied. "We're in this together now." She studied him for a moment, then pressed her palm against the pod's control panel. The symbols on her skin flared brightly. "I can override it," she said, her voice strained with effort. "But it will take what little strength I have left." The pod systems flickered, then stabilized as her glowing chains seemed to interface directly with the technology. "Launch sequence reinitiated," the AI announced. "Warning, unsafe occupancy detected. Proceed at own risk." "Do it," Rel urged. The pod shuddered, then launched upward through an emergency shaft, accelerating toward the surface as the facility collapsed beneath them. The cramped space forced them against each other, her cool skin pressed against his as the pod rocketed through layers of ice and rock. They found an access shaft that led upward, emerging onto the ice plains where a storm was visibly approaching. The sky had darkened to a deep crimson, and the wind carried particles that stung exposed skin. They walked across the barren landscape, each step more difficult than the last. Rel's injured leg gave out completely, and he fell heavily to his knees. "I can't," he gasped, the pain overwhelming. Sarah knelt beside him. Without hesitation, she slipped her slender arm around his waist and lifted him, demonstrating strength that belied her frame. "I've got you," she said, her voice steady despite the strain. "Just keep moving." "You're slowing," Rel noted with concern, feeling her trembling beneath his weight. "The bond weakens," she explained, looking at the symbols on her skin. The glow had dimmed significantly. "The sentence requires isolation. Your compassion disrupts it." Rel tried to take more of his own weight, but his leg refused to cooperate. "Put me down. I'm just slowing you down." "No," she said firmly. "We find another way." She staggered forward, each step a testament to her determination. Her breathing became labored, her skin paler, but she refused to release him. "Why?" he asked, genuinely confused by her persistence. "Why risk yourself for me?" She didn't answer immediately, focusing on maintaining their forward momentum. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely audible over the howling wind. "Because you reminded me what it means to be human," she said. 300 years alone? I forgot. The sentence is breaking. You chose mercy. That changes things." Her legs gave way. She collapsed into the snow, body trembling, still trying to support Rel even as her strength failed. He knelt beside her, holding her against the bitter cold. "Stay with me. We're getting out of here." Her skin flickered, literally flickered, as if her physical form was becoming unstable. "I'm not dying," she whispered, seeing his expression. "I'm changing." Around them, the storm intensified, but strangely, the swirling particles seemed to be gathering toward them rather than simply blowing past. They spiraled around Sarah's form, responding to some unseen force. "What's happening to you?" Rel asked, shielding his eyes against the increasingly bright phenomenon. "The sentence contained more than my body," she explained, her voice stronger despite her weakened state. "It contained what I created. What I am." The particles coalesced, forming patterns identical to the symbols on her chains. They spun faster, creating a cocoon of light around her. "There," she said suddenly, pointing across the plain. "The old landing field." Rel looked where she indicated. In the distance, barely visible through the storm, stood a structure different from the others. A launch platform, perhaps, or a communications array. "Can you walk?" he asked. "Carry me," she replied. "I need to conserve what strength remains." He lifted her, surprised at how light she felt, almost insubstantial. The glowing particles moved with them as he trudged toward the distant structure, fighting against the worsening conditions and the pain in his leg. By the time they reached the edge of the landing field, the moon's surface was breaking apart around them. Fissures opened in the ice, releasing geysers of steam and molten material from below. The destruction of the station had triggered a catastrophic chain reaction throughout the planetary body. The structure they sought was indeed a landing pad, long abandoned but remarkably intact. Beneath layers of ice, Rel discovered what they needed: a rescue beacon, buried but potentially functional. He activated it, bypassing damaged systems and rerouting power from his own equipment. The beacon hummed to life, its signal cutting through whatever temporal distortion had hidden this moon for centuries. Sarah stood beside him, supported by the landing pad's railing. The cocoon of light still surrounded her, but it had stabilized, no longer fluctuating wildly. "They will come for me," she said, watching the beacon pulse. The beacon's warning system flashed. "Unauthorized signal detected. Security forces alerted. Estimated arrival, 10 minutes. Rel looked at her, understanding the choice before them. With the last of his tools, he could disable the beacon, preventing rescue, but also keeping her location hidden from those who would finish her sentence. "You can still escape alone," she said, her voice gentle. "The beacon has registered your salvager ID. They'll come for you, not knowing about me. And leave you here. This moon is dying," she reminded him. A clean end to a long sentence. The choice hung between them as the storm raged and the ground continued to fracture beneath their feet. Freedom for one, or risk for both. Rel made his decision. He took her hand. Through the glow, he felt solid fingers intertwine with his. "Then let them try." She stared at him, amber eyes wide with something that might have been hope, and for the first time smiled. "You kissed me as a joke." "Yeah," he admitted with a rueful grin. "Not my finest moment." "So why are you still here?" "Because you woke up," he answered simply. And that changed everything. The beacon signal strengthened, cutting through space and time toward civilization. Around them, the moon continued its gradual collapse, not with violence, but with a strange grace, as if returning to the nothingness from which it had been artificially sustained. She looked out at the disintegrating landscape, then back to him. The chains that had bound her were now merely patterns of light, fading into her skin. "You kissed the prisoner," she said softly. "Now we both carry the sentence, but we choose how it ends." Above them, The empty sky finally cracked, revealing stars hidden for centuries. Among them, a responding light, a ship answering the beacon's call. As the rescue vessel approached through the storm, warning sirens began to blare across the landing pad. Red strobes pulsed in rhythm with the facility's final alert system. Prisoner escape detected. Retrieval protocol activated. The woman tensed, looking up at the approaching ship. They know I'm here. We can still run, Rel suggested, looking toward the distant ice formations. She shook her head. No more running. With deliberate movements, she stepped closer to him. The light from her chains intensified, casting them both in an ethereal glow. She placed her hands on either side of his face, her touch no longer cold, but warm with life. What are you doing? He asked, confused. Accepting the sentence, she replied, but on my terms. She leaned forward and kissed him, not with the lifeless coldness of their first encounter, but with fierce intensity. The symbols on her skin flared blindingly bright, transferring to him in patterns that spread across his body. For a moment, they stood connected by light, by choice rather than accident. When she pulled away, the chains had vanished completely from her body. Instead, the symbols now glowed softly on both of them, forming matching patterns that pulsed in unison. Now we are truly bound, she whispered. Not by prison, but by choice. The rescue ship landed on the crumbling pad, its engines howling against the storm. The ramp descended, revealing armed figures in environment suits. What happens now? Rel asked. We write our own ending, she replied. 7 days later, the isolation cell was dark, save for the soft blue glow emanating from their skin. They sat side by side against the wall, no longer bound by physical chains but still prisoners. 312 years, Rel mused, and now they've given us both life sentences. At least we have company, she replied, a hint of that rare smile touching her lips. The cell was deep within a maximum security detention center, orbiting a gas giant at the edge of controlled space. No one escaped from this place, or so the authorities believed. The symbols, Rel said, examining the glowing patterns on his arm. I've been studying them. And they're not just a prison mark. They're code. He traced one particular pattern. This sequence, it's a key to your technology. She nodded slowly. The one thing they feared most, the ability to connect minds across distance. Is it possible? He asked. Could we use it? She placed her hand over his, their matching symbols aligning perfectly. It's already happening. Why do you think they put us in isolated containment? They know what we can do together. So what's the plan? Her amber eyes gleamed in the darkness. We have something they never anticipated. What's that? Time, she replied. And each other. Above them, unnoticed by the prison sensors, a small fluctuation occurred in the cell's containment field, a minuscule weakness created by the harmonized symbols on their skin. Not enough to escape through. Not yet, but it was a beginning.